Thank you very much for coming this evening to the latest event in the Comment Visions series. By way of introduction, we're very pleased to be here with the representation of Nordrhein-Westfalen, and you'd like to say a few words, please.
Thank you, Simon. Welcome here, ladies and gentlemen, in the representation of North Rhine-Westphalia and to this interesting event tonight. And I think the organizers, they took the right decision when they decided to come here to North Rhine-Westphalia, because many of you know that North Rhine-Westphalia is one of the so-called hotspots of energy in Germany. So have in mind that alone in North Rhine-Westphalia, we produced 30% of the total German electricity. We consumed almost 30% of the German electricity as well in North Rhine-Westphalia. And the other way around, we have almost 30% of the German greenhouse gases emitted in North Rhine-Westphalia as well. So everything what happens on the energy scene here in Brussels or elsewhere is important for us, as you can imagine. And we in North Rhine-Westphalia, with our own climate legislation, for example, which is very unique within the European Union, try to cope with these problems. So in this sense, a good decision and good luck and fruitful discussions here tonight. Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you. As I say, welcome again to the latest event in the Comment Visions series, focusing on the Energy Roadmap 2050, power choices and pathways. For those of you who haven't been to a Comment Visions event before, it's a partnership between European Voice and Euronews in association with Shell to provide a platform for debate about the energy and environmental challenges we face. Before I move on to talk about the substance of this evening's event and the speakers, some of you may have noticed on the way in a car in the reception area. If you haven't had a chance to go and look at it, it's called UT Motif, and it's one of the winners of the Shell Eco Marathon competition 2012. It was built and designed by a team of 11 students from Twente University in the Netherlands, Green Team Twente. And it was the winning entry in the urban concept hydrogen category. It's a hydrogen fuel cell vehicle. And the team achieved the best fuel efficiency performance, 75 kilometers per kilowatt hour, which petrol equivalent, and I've got this written down, of course, 727.5 kilometers on 1 litre of gasoline. And for the benefit of Brits like Philip and myself, that's 1,711 miles per gallon. And these gentlemen will be here for the rest of the evening, so please go and look at the vehicle and talk to them about their great innovation. I'd like to say, first of all, that we had planned that we were hoping very much that Niki Tzavela, the rapporteur on the Energy Roadmap 2050, would be able to join us this evening. Unfortunately, she had health problems yesterday. I spoke to her assistant today, and she's already feeling a lot better, but the doctor's advice was not to take on the burdens of this evening's event. I'm sure we'll all join together in wishing her a full and speedy recovery. We are equally lucky, however, though, that Claude Termes, who I'm sure you know very well, has been able to step into the breach. I want to press on with the event, so I'm going to quickly run through the speakers. We have on my right Philip Lowe, Director General for Energy at the European Commission. On Philip's right, Jason Anderson, Head of European Energy and Climate Change Policy at WWF. Claude Termes from the Industry, Trade and Research Committee, Greens Coordinator on Energy Policy. And on my far left, Mr. Ulrich Stridbeck from Head of Group Regulatory Affairs at Dong Energy. And then at the end of the proceedings, at the end of the event later on, Dick Benschop from Shell Netherlands will give some concluding remarks. The topic we chose for this evening, you may have noticed we titled it the EU's Energy Roadmap 2050, perhaps rather optimistically, because we hope the EU as a whole might endorse it. But of course that wasn't the case. Briefly, the roadmap is intended to set out the pathways for decarbonisation of the energy sector by 2050. to achieve the target of reducing greenhouse gas emissions by 80 to 95% by 2050. The roadmap sets out a number of scenarios for achieving that goal. I don't want to list them all, but high energy efficiency, high renewable energy sources, low nuclear. What's common to all the scenarios is a much higher share of renewables, at least 55%. And what comes out very clearly is the need for investment in flexible energy infrastructure. I think there's a few key messages from the roadmap. That decarbonisation is possible, but the task for developing strategies for 2030 out to 2050 is urgent, that gas will be critical in the transformation, and that ETS will have to play an increased role. As you know, at last Friday's Energy Council, the Danish presidency was not able to achieve unanimity on conclusions on the roadmap because of the position of Poland. So I think many of us are wondering what the implications of that outcome are for energy policy in the next 6 months, but also in the decades to come. With no further ado, I'd like to give the floor to Philip Lowe to talk about the energy roadmap. Philip.
Okay, thanks very much. And first of all, congratulations to the Twente team. It's a fantastic example of what you can do creatively in relation to big challenges and with few resources, but with a lot of effort. Secondly, if I'm looking rather disconcerted, it's because these speakers make you feel as if there's a wasp around your nose somewhere, and it's just about to sting you.
I thought that was just me.
No, I think all of us have the same sensation, but they are very effective in making sure that you can hear us. I think I'm only going to say hopefully one or two simple things, because you can all read documents and you've seen us plead these various messages over the last 6 months. Wherever you go in the world, people talk about providing society with safe, secure, sustainable sources of energy at affordable prices for people and ordinary people, and competitive prices for business. We're in a situation in Europe where that challenge is met by a combination of national decisions and decisions taken at a European level. Now, one of the things which was said to us many times in the last 2 years in the Commission, particularly from the financial sector, we don't understand anymore where energy policy is going, because there's so many different decisions taken at national level in relation to energy mix. They change, by the way. There's so many different decisions taking about the level of support to new technologies like renewables. The level of support changes. You say you're in favor of a low-carbon economy, but what pathways will take you there? What kind of predictability can you give to investors in this sector, that they're not just shooting an arrow in the dark when they invest in any kind of in infrastructure at all? And so our aim really was to confront both the European Union, member states, Parliament as a whole on the one hand, but also member state governments, parliaments on the other, and say, listen, if we're serious about the 2050 goal of reducing emissions by 80 to 95% by 2050, what is the comparison which you can make between existing policies and what they will achieve? And what are the pathways which possibly could get you to this low-carbon economy objective, taking into account the different decisions which you may or may not take at national level on fuel mix. Fuel mix is a difficult subject. It's in the treaty, the Lisbon Treaty is something which is of national competence. But already the European Union, by committing itself to low carbon economy goals for 2020 and binding targets for renewables, already took a large bite out of discretion on energy mix at national level. And if you think about what a 20% target means for renewables in 2020, it means 35% of electricity of renewables. Well, when you get to that level, and you're already talking about a rather significant proportion of electricity from renewable sources, and the only choice is then left for member states, or indeed the companies in member states, because there's also the fiction that these are national decisions. In reality, companies in the end have to make these decisions as to whether they produce electricity through gas without subsidy for the moment, or renewables with subsidy, or nuclear, probably also with subsidy.
Is that allowed?
Well, we'll come on to that in a minute. Or you try to promote carbon capture and storage to abate CO2 in thermal power stations, as we believe it should be as an important component of the final mix. But necessarily, this roadmap cannot result in decisions in itself. It has to confront every national government with what the picture looks like, what the scenarios look like with high CCS, low CCS, high nuclear, low nuclear, very high renewables, not so high renewables. See what the implications, where each member state can find themselves in these scenarios, and take the conclusions for national policy, but at the same time say, well, what do these scenarios mean for the development of European policy, and what are the things which we as a group of countries can do together, which notwithstanding market developments, notwithstanding what companies want to do, notwithstanding what governments decide on energy mix, look like robust, no-regret options. Now, Poland didn't sign up to the Friday's positive conclusions on the roadmap. That doesn't worry us one iota. We have 26 member states who strongly backed us. And Poland has a consistent line which we have to respect, which is to say, well, we are not certain that we should be agreeing to an objective, an 80 to 95% reduction in emissions by 2050, unless there is a global agreement in developed countries in the world, which actually we can go along with and we can be part of. And they have on their side one argument, which is potentially valid, which is that at the moment the European Union accounts for 11% of emissions worldwide, and maybe in 2030 it'll only be 4% of emissions. So they say, well, what's the point of us signing up to the strategy if indeed the rest of the world is going on doing things which will actually, in the end, undermine our own competitiveness if we go for a strategy which is different? I think the answer to that really is that first of all, the IEA has confirmed, and all scientific studies still confirm a really serious rise in the temperatures of the world. We're heading for 6% increase, a 6% rise in temperature, a 6-degree rise in temperature, not 2 degrees, and even without a collective agreement, I think that you'll find most of the European Union member states, including the Commission, arguing that irrespective of whether there is a collective agreement, it makes sense to diversify sources of supply, to develop energy efficiency, to develop renewables as an indigenous source of energy, which makes sense for Europe. So that's why we have a clear difference with Poland. We are not going to condition our proposals on the idea that we won't do anything until there is a global agreement. Now coming round, and I'll stop after that. So coming round to what we got out of this exercise. Well, as I said, the financial institutions are very, very negative about the energy sector. Totally unpredictable, uninvestable, as the Citibank study said. I think this roadmap does concentrate minds. It concentrates minds not just on emissions reduction, but on cost-effective scenarios for achieving the low carbon economy target, on taking into account security of supply issues as well. Energy policy is not just about CO2 emissions. We've got to save ourselves as well as saving the world. We arrived at some no-regrets conclusions, which I think have stood the test of the debate over the last 6 months, but obviously have implications for national and European policy. And we are not saying that the roadmap in itself decides everything, because there's a lot of uncertainty in the market still, and we'll have to come back to a number of the questions. But they're basic, simple messages. There's going to be a lot more electricity in the energy systems of Europe. There's going to be a very high level of renewables. There's going to be a need, with that high level of renewables, for a much smarter infrastructure to intelligently manage not just supply from generation, but also storage, demand response. So an intelligent energy system is about demand management and not just about supply management. And the next conclusion is, well, of all the requirements to meet that ultimate target, which looks the most cost-effective and is indeed essential, we can no longer talk about a 20% improvement in energy efficiency, as we have done for 2020, and where Claude and I and a number of others have been fighting to make sure that the new energy efficiency directive gets somewhere near to that, and the transport area too. We need at least 30 to 40% improvement. Whether you measure it in terms of energy efficiency or in terms of energy intensity, this is an improvement in the sense of using energy competitively, using energy in a way which makes sense for ordinary people too. The most efficient products, the most efficient systems, the most efficient processes, the most efficient ways of running buildings. And so those are the things. More electricity, more renewables, better infrastructure, more energy efficiency. And so far I haven't heard anyone who will contest those four things. Now there's a fifth one, which is important too, because we're not naive about the markets globally. What is the source of electricity and heat which doesn't require subsidy for the moment? Gas. And the price of... Well, wait a minute. You can come back to that.
You'll get your turn in a minute.
You can come back to that. When you are able to have a state aid regime for Russia, tell me. But the fact is that delivered gas in the European Union, from the point of view of the...
Who paid for the pipelines?
Yeah.
It was public paying for the pipelines.
Russia.
Russia.
No.
Let Philip finish. You'll have your time. No, Claude, please. Just wait.
You can have your say later anyway. I'll contradict you. But the reality is that is a choice which is, at the moment, not taken because the economic recession isn't encouraging investments anywhere. It isn't also, the investments in low carbon economy are not encouraged either by the absence of a robust ETS price. I think that one of the lessons here, which is mentioned in some of the papers this evening too, is the reality that if you want to incentivize low carbon economy investments, you've got to have a sustained rise in the ETS price, which is foreseen by the directive in terms of the reduction of allowances, but at the moment at 6 or 7 euros per ton of CO2 is not playing a proper role, and the Commission's committed to coming forward with proposals on that to make sure something happens. gas is bound to be used, in our view, much more from now until 2030 and 2035, not just as a transition fuel, but as an alternative to coal, where obviously you save a lot of CO2.
Sorry.
You have your theory and you can explain it, but for the moment, I'm going to tell you what the reality is, and you can contact. We're used to each other, you see.
Commission arrogant.
Not arrogant. We just modestly put forward what we know to be economic facts, and then the question is, well, how can you have so much more reliance, which the market might take on gas, without thinking about abatement of CO2 beyond 2030, 2025? Really big problem. I think, too, as Claude has rightly said, we've got to look at all the ways in which public authorities, through regulation or through direct subsidy, hidden or direct, are actually supporting low-carbon economy investments, because we need a level playing field. And that level playing field doesn't exist at the moment. I don't think you need a forced package of legislation for that. You need a strong and disciplined state aid policy. And I think that's the way we should be going. That's
Great.
right.
Thanks, Philip. Okay, Claude, you've already spoken, so I'm going to pass you over.
He spoke for 20 minutes and I for 10 seconds.
Okay, Claude, please, your time.
So it's a bit of a strange panel, because outside how big gas will be, and maybe Mr. Lowe is a bit more radioactive than I am, but outside that, the four people who sit here want a much stronger efficiency agenda, a much stronger renewable agenda, a much stronger agenda on modernizing the electricity grid, and I think the four of us are also wanting to do this inside of a very vivid competition in the internal market. So maybe that we have to bring in the Shell people also. I'm a bit surprised that they are not sitting here, because I think it would be probably much more interesting to have you here than just commenting afterwards. Good, but that's what maybe a detail of the setting of this event. So, investment security. And now I will quote an organization which is not at all a green grassroots. It's the International Energy Agency in Paris. Has done last year a report under the title of Summing Up the Parts. So they have analyzed what kind of targets, in which areas do you need to, in a certain sense, frame the investment decisions of banks and of companies. And they say basically, they say the European Union got it right. The combination of a greenhouse gas target, an efficiency target, and a renewable target is exactly what the economy needs to know where you have to go. ETS alone is basically only working in the middle of this McKinsey graphic. So you will get a bit of gas to coal, and if is anybody hoping to get an EU ETS price of 300, that is what you need per ton in order to get a bit of an efficient car. So everything which is with efficiency is, has to be done with old-fashioned, hardcore standards for cars, for houses, and we need overall, and that's why I'm so proud that last week we achieved this energy efficiency directive, which is now Europe has transformed this energy efficiency political aim of going to 20% into a legal framework which will force member states, every member state will have to give a national efficiency target. Philip will monitor it, and in 2014 he will be forced, if the sum does not end up, to come up with proposals to tighten the national targets, because it is now in the text, it is accompanied by measures or new targets and no more followed by. So efficiency, renewables, greenhouse gas. And that's, so IEA says, just a greenhouse gas ETS signal is much too delusive, and it will not create investment security. And that's where we have a big difference with Shell and with this very aggressive EGAF, Gazprom, Qatar Gas, Statoil, Shell, Gaz de France, who basically, they say, get rid of renewable targets and never go for 2030 renewable targets. And the same Shells of this world also say, never, never a next efficiency target in 2030. And then we come to the gas story. Where is gas today in Europe? 45% of all gas in Europe is in heating houses, which are not well insulated. So with the directive which we have decided last week, we have decided that the gas volume in heating houses, which is the biggest market for gas in Europe, will dramatically go down, and very quickly. This volume can never be compensated by the gas which will flow into the power sector. There is already a lot of gas in the UK power sector, in the Spanish power sector, in the Italian power sector, so it's only Germany and France which will catch up a bit, and maybe Poland. And, very important to understand, because wind and solar will dominate the electricity market, the running hours of gas power plants will not be 700, 500 hours, but they will be much, so it's around 2,000, 2,500, and some peak gas will be much. So there is absolutely no chance to get to more gas volumes. And because that is so, that explains why Shell and Gazprom and Qatar Gas want to blow up efficiency targets and renewable targets, and basically create a complete fuss on the investment signal. So you know that I'm outspoken because what I want in these discussions is that we identify the issues where we are not in agreement, and so there is two roadmap to implementation possibilities. You go for a very volatile EU ETS system standalone, and then probably the only power sector investment will be gas, because for all the rest it will be so shaky that nobody will go for it. Or you go for renewable targets with national support systems plus EU cooperation, you continue with the efficiency policy, and then you will basically get a lot of renewable in the system. So there we have a major difference, and I think we should discuss also with Shell this major difference. Are you in favor of renewable targets 2030? Are you in favor of efficiency targets 2030? And the one issue which also in this so-called cost efficiency discussion, what I have never understood, are you aware that the 2020 document of EU Commission from January 2007, which then led to Mrs. Merkel's getting all heads of states in March 2007 to sign for 2020. That was based on a prime scenario in summer 2006, which was called high efficiency, high renewables. So in 2006, Commission dared to calculate a high efficiency, high renewable scenario and based its policy on that. And dear Philip, one day you will have to explain me who the hell in Commission decided that this time there was a veto to calculate in the roadmap a high efficiency, high renewable scenario. That's a democratic scandal. It is a bias. It's an imposed bias on plain democracy, understanding what kinds of options are in front of us. Why was Commission able in 2006 to do a high efficiency, high renewable scenario, and why is it blocking a high efficiency, high renewable scenario today? Because that scenario would show us that it is the most cost effective, that we said we can get renewable targets in 2030 in the area of 45%, and that then we will get investment security, and basically we would almost have solved the problem. So who is engineering and who has taken this decision? Is it the services? Is it the commissioner? One day I want to understand. And was the gas industry and the gas lobby behind this decision?
No, it's a technical issue.
Oh, it's not a technical
issue.
It is. It's not at all a technical issue.
If you're modeling...
Could we save it for the discussion?
Yeah,
I don't want to...
Take it outside.
But it sounds like he's prepared to answer the question tonight. You won't have to wait for...
no, it's great, because since 6 months I don't get an answer.
Okay.
No, you're not listening.
Had you finished, Claude, or do you have more to say?
No, I could continue, but it's much more funny if we get my friends in, because they will support me.
Yeah. Okay. Okay.